Hey, all. Scott here from Art of the Genre, and we're here today. This is our fourth episode. This one, we're going to be talking about our favorite monsters, debating them, and maybe trying to talk about how they would go into going from, let's say, a 1E AD&D into the fast system, which I like to switch a lot of things over. And I have like a booklet that I continually work on, just transferring monsters over to fast for D&D. But anyway, and with me as always is Hal from 13th Warlock.
Greetings, all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have three monsters this week. We picked three monsters. One 3 hit dice and below, one 5 hit dice below, one 7 hit dice below. We're going to compare and contrast the monsters, decide which one is cooler. I think all three of mine are going to be the coolest. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And then we'll transfer them over into fast as best we can and go from there. So let's get started. I'm real eager to do this. I've got pictures. And so now we haven't discussed what these monsters are yet.
Right.
So Scott has no idea what my 3 is. Scott let
He
one.
would not tell me them.
No. I refuse to tell.
I don't know why he wouldn't tell me so I could set it up, but he's going to
Definitely
have to
did.
pay the price for that one. Yeah.
I want them to be a complete surprise. Now, if I send you pictures, can you?
I can't put them up.
Can't put them up at this point.
Yeah, you had to tell me beforehand because I can only do it through a slideshow, so on a PowerPoint. So anyway, yeah.
All right. Maybe we'll do some ghetto stuff here and see if we can put them up on my iPad.
Had to be so secretive, so secretive.
Yeah, of course. All right, well, let's go. Let's do the 3 hit dice one. Let's get started on this. I'm excited. What is your 3 hit dice or below monster?
Well, I didn't even check the hit dice, but I went for the lowest quantity here. I think I'm probably somewhere close to that. So mine is going to be the Displacer Beast, which is might be a little bit higher than 3, but
way higher. I think that's like a 5. That's like a 5 hit dice creature.
Right. So it is. Oh well. But nevertheless, I fell in love with the Displacer Beast from a very young age. And everyone knows who's ever played with me in Dungeons and Dragons that if you run into a Displacer Beast, there's going to be trouble because I love playing these creatures. I love anything that is very, very difficult to hit. And it having the ability to displace itself while tearing at you with those back tentacles is something that I absolutely love. Anytime I get somebody in the woods, and I use these things all over the place, and I've used them in probably every campaign I've been in. And whenever anybody hears Displacer Beast or hears a roar or anything like that, they know they're in trouble. I don't know what there is that you couldn't like about this creature because it is a fantastic predator. They're alone, so you can use them. But typically a party, can kill them or at least chase them off, but they're going to do some damage beforehand. And nothing frustrates players, I think, more than having the ability to miss something outright. And it's always fun to irritate players, obviously, when you're a GM, or at least for me in that standpoint. So that is why I love the Displacer Beast. That's all I've got to say about that. So what do you have to say, Hal, on the Displacer Beast?
Well, everybody kind of likes the Displacer Beast because they look like panthers. They do have that cool factor. There's no two ways about that. But they were never really a staple in any of my games, simply because I really couldn't figure out how they worked. You could understand certain monsters who have special abilities. Like you get a mimic, it looks like a chest. It's really a monster. You reach into it and it bites you. But how is it appearing and looking like it's in one place and then appearing in another? Like what is that? How does that work? How do these tentacle things make that happen? What is it,
Well, I think the most interesting part about it, and something I was kind of thrilled about, that they decided that they would put it into the new D&D movie. And I was kind of scared because I was like, "Are you going to screw this up? This is my favorite creatures of all time," and they did a great job And it's basically the displacement on these things would be an illusionary projection. I'm invisible here, but I'm projecting an image here. How they do that, I don't know. That's just a magical power. And I love the fact that they've got a natural enemy in blink dogs. I think that is hilarious. I think that's awesome that somebody wrote that in to the original monster manual, and that you could have elves hunt with blink dogs against these creatures. They hunt in packs, the blink dogs do, and they travel in the same world, alternate dimension world of displacement, as these creatures do. So you could even almost take it as they're from some bizarre dimension that they both happen to be creatures in, and somehow got to our world or to the prime material world. And then you see how they do that, and I thought they represented it really well in that movie.
They
That
were
you're
cool in the
looking
movie.
here and you get enter from the
They were
side, kind of
cool.
thing.
Were they ever featured in a Dragon magazine where they talked about, sometimes they did like the biology of the beholder, the
Yeah,
biology of the displacer beast? Did they ever do
if they
something?
did, I'm not aware of it. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I've never seen that article. I know they did a lot of ecologies or you do stuff
Yeah.
like that, but obviously they've been in every iteration of a monster manual, from the beginning of time to now. So I mean, they're obviously one of those arc thread creatures that always appears. So they're definitely hardwired into the dynamics of Dungeons and Dragons, which I think is why they were such a great choice, and a great choice to put in a maze that they could come at you from different angles. So anyway, um, that's my lower level, not going into something like 1 or 2 hit dice monsters. Which if I had to pick something like that, I'd probably go kobold, because they're hilarious and I love the little traps that they do. But if I'm going for one of my, I couldn't really find a perfect place to put it in, so I'm just going to go with Displacer Beast there.
All right.
All right. So what do you got?
Well, let me go with let me go. You know what? I'm going with my first monster as
Yeah.
well, even though you didn't follow the rules and get the appropriate hit pictures. I'm going with mine.
Yeah.
And the picture has not transferred over to my iPad, so I can't even hold it up and show a ghetto version. But everybody knows what these things are. And my first monster is a lizard man.
Okay.
I
We knew that was coming.
Yeah,
We knew it was coming. Last week
absolutely
you'd
no.
established that was your creature. Yeah.
It was absolutely coming. Lizard men are hands down the coolest of the humanoids that D&D is rolled out. They're like walking dinosaur men, So anybody who was ever a kid loves dinosaurs, and these things are like walking dinosaur men. They're absolutely awesome. They can go in swamps. They can go in more swamps. Um, if there's a forest and it's backed up to some swampland, they can be in the forest too.
That's a swamp.
Swamps. That's what I love in my games. Swamps and lizard men.
You like dirty things that
Yeah,
are dirty and scummy. Yeah, we've seen your
exactly.
artwork, so we know.
If you were, that's where the adventurers are at. You know what I'm saying? If it wasn't dirty
You're
and
in the
scummy, you wouldn't
swamps.
need regular townspeople could go there. Anybody goes in the woods and cuts down some trees. It takes an adventurer to go into the swamp and get muddy.
Uh-huh.
These things are awesome. They're not necessary that you can layer them in a whole bunch of different ways. They have an intelligence, so you can use them. If you want to do some trap stuff, they're smart enough where they can set traps, they can set pits, they can set some primitive things like that up that might throw your players off. They are they have some shamanic stuff going on. So you can throw some magic in there. You can incorporate or really kind of dig into that. With They could be led by like a powerful shaman. They could be led by like a larger, powerful lizard man, because they're neutral, and it's got that slight slant to evil. They can even be minions of a more powerful evil. So you could put, maybe they're working for a hag in the swamp, or maybe they're working for some kind of reclusive lizard or a reclusive witch in the swamp, or a necromancer or something like that. You can just put so many layers on them, and the base coolness of a lizard man just elevates anything to the next level. Anything. Much,
Lane
much
said a
cooler
druid
than
or ranger will take care of most things in this one. Agreed, Lane. Those stupid lizard men, they just wipe them out. Get them out of my
this
face.
is a group with a good druid and a ranger would take care of most things in a swamp. And that's a compelling point, because you throw a druid in there now with these lizard men, this is their natural habitat. They're not like goblins that are infesting a forest and, just doing horrible things to the forest, cutting it down, killing everything that they can come across. They're not like evil, horrible creatures. They belong there. Just like the alligators that are floating around and stuff in the swamps, these lizard men belong there. So a druid is really going to have to think twice about clearing out a den of lizard men whose natural environment is the swamp. I would put that to any druid in my group.
It's an interesting point. I if I was going for something in that vein, I've always leaned toward gnolls, which are my favorite creature within the course of the more humanoid, right? Monsters of that kind of hit dice level. Love gnolls, but I got to give it to you. I mean, lizard men are a lot of fun. I remember the first. I wish I had an image of this I could throw up. But one of the first lizard men I ever saw was actually in Rogue's Gallery. Do you remember the old Rogue's
Oh
Gallery?
yeah, love that. I know exactly who you're talking about. The guy
Yeah,
that
I think it's a Jeff
Polymorph.
D. I think
Yes.
D did it, and obviously it's a human that's been reincarnated as a lizard man. I think is the
Yeah, that's what it was. He wasn't polymorph. He was reincarnated. You're
he was
right.
reincarnated as a lizard man. Everyone loves rolling that rolling the reincarnate. See what they come up with. It can throw a lot of fun into your campaigns. But nevertheless, that's one of the first ones I ever saw, and I thought, whoa, he's badass.
Yeah.
And it was the first time it ever clicked with me that a monster could be something other than a monster, right? And playing lizardmen, like you said, if you want to lean them towards whatever power it might be over them or interacting with them, they don't have to be wholly evil. And I think that's one of the more fun things in using humanoid monsters like that, like a lizard man, or even a gnoll. I actually played a gnoll in 3rd edition, and one of the best things there, his storyline was he was a pup and he was beaten because he was the smallest of the litter, and he was sneaking around a camp of humanoids, and they had captured a priestess of a cleric of Soon, and she was in a cage dying, and he like went up to sniff her, like, what is she? And with her last breath, she cured him because he was hurt because he had been beaten. And at that point, he became vested in Soon, who's a goddess of beauty,
Right.
and was a follower of hers, and then like broke out and wasn't a standard Knoll, and went through his whole life thinking he was a priest of Soon, which he wasn't. He was just a fighter, but he bathed in everyone else's blood that he killed and called it because she's the red hair. So he'd get his hair all red with blood and say he was investing in the goddess Soon and beauty. Anyway, it was quite fun. So it's really neat to go through something like that and have those interactions with a really cool race like a lizard man, and make a story and make something that sticks with you. Yeah.
So now let's talk some fast stuff. My
Okay.
creature is definitely an easier transfer. It would probably be what, a medium enemy.
Well, see, when you talk about lizard men, or gnolls or goblins or anything like that, I would probably say any of them are going to be light,
No,
right?
don't say that. Come on, man.
No,
That's
I would
like
say any of them are going to be
goblin.
light, but they have series of groups. So if you just encountered some lizard men out, I would say they're light. They would probably have a leader that would be medium, and then probably their chieftain or their shamans, they could go up to heavy or faded. So they've got a range they would go up in. Now, if you can always take a light creature, that's just one wound, but you can make him as tough as you want to in wound threshold, his DC, because he's scaly. His attack could be higher than a normal light, but still, I would leave the base fighters as 1 wound and something like that, because we are talking 3 hit dice or less, which are not supposed to be the most difficult. And there are only 3 levels within fast, so that's light, medium, heavy. So you got to stick within those ranges. So that's where I would put them in.
If my memory serves correct, I remember going through your dungeons fighting zombies, and those jokers were medium with 2 wounds.
Zombies?
Yeah, zombies.
I mean, it depends on where they are. You can you can give anything more wounds, but typically any of the undead should be, especially zombies or skellies or anything like that, should be 1
They
wound.
had 2 wounds. I feel like you're robbing my lizard men, but I see where you. I see where you're coming from with the 1 wound, but then increasing their DT
Right.
so that they're harder to hit, and their wound threshold so that they're
Harder
harder
to
to
damage.
wound. But when they take that 1 wound, then they do go down.
Right.
And from playing fast through Star Frontiers, I've been keeping that kind of mindset. Like, okay, well, if it's a little tougher, I'm going to make it a medium creature. But and keeping the wound threshold and their stats, their attributes, and their DT kind of in the area of like if it's medium, it has this grouping of stats. If it's light, it has this grouping of stats. But it really doesn't have to be that. It could be they just have 1 wound, but their stats are, a lot better. And it's
Noticeably better. They're tougher creatures, but still 1 wound kills them. And the one thing you've got to understand when fast, and I've noticed this a lot, you can get caught up in wounds, and giving something more wounds makes it better. But one of the things you got to understand in fast is it's fast for a reason, because the combats should go quickly, right? And if something goes from 1 wound to 2 wounds, you double the amount of time it takes for the encounter, especially if they're multiple creatures, like 6 lizard men. With 2 hits instead of 1 hit, you double it. And if they're 3, then you just tripled your amount of time invested in that combat. And any of the low level combats or humanoids or stuff like that should be a little faster. That's why I go with the 1 hit with the 1 wound. That way, if you do that good hit, you can take 1 down. But nevertheless, that's where I'd look at it. And if you're looking at a displacer beast, I'd really be going back and forth in that one as well. I might leave it at 1 wound, especially even though it's, let's say, a 5 hit dice monster in D&D. I might leave it at 1 wound, increase its difficulty to hit it, and then it's going to have its special power, which is 50% miss chance anyway. That's going to give it multiple wounds per se, because you're missing it so many times. So it really depends. But if it hunts alone, you might make it a more powerful creature and make it fated, even if you wanted to, something like that, just because you're not going to have 7 of them you're fighting. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's the difference. Yeah. If you had 1 lone lizard man who was out there whooping people's ass, he'd have more than that. Yeah.
So now the displacer beast, we're talking about a creature that is in one place but appears to be in another place. That's DT. Now we got a DT that caps at 4 in fast. Are we saying the thing has a DT of 4, or are we giving it some kind of special ability that will add?
It has a special ability. Its special ability is basically a 50% miss chance. So on a 1 to 5, you miss it, and on a 6 to 10, you hit it. If you've actually hit it, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's its displacement. So it's basically a 50% miss chance every time somebody jumps it. And I've used that in several different campaigns. I don't know if I've ever used it in fast on a displacer beast, but I've used it in fast, and it works. It's really frustrating for characters. But one of the neat things too about it, if you can mitigate that too. Let's say you've got somebody, let's say you're playing a gnoll for some reason. They have a heightened sense of smell or something like that. Maybe you give them a +1 on that, so they only miss on a 1 to 4, and they hit on a 6 to 10. Because because their senses are more heightened than a human, which would miss on a 50-50 chance. So you can do that and mitigate that miss chance as well. Right.
I think, and also the lesson I'm taking away from this is, sometimes you just keep it simple with fast, like rather than balance out, well, okay, this thing has this ability, so its defensive threshold, maybe we'll make it a 4, and then we'll give it a magical bonus that will raise it. The simple answers is the best one. Give it a 50-50 miss chance. Boom, write it, the monster's transferred, and we move on from there. You have a monster. So,
Right.
all right.
You ready for number 2?
I'm ready for number 2. I hate to ask what the hit dice is of this next one you're throwing up.
I'm sure it's gonna be higher.
Um, let's see what you got. I might have to pick some stuff on the fly. You don't have my picture, so I can throw anything
I
out
think
there.
I think your Lizardman was an awesome choice, so we're fine.
Yeah, I don't
Let's see.
regret the lizard man. I take the lizard man hands down for anything. All right,
Right.
what's the next
Okay. So I want to hit Lane here because he did ask. He said, "At the president of the AD&D group I'm in. We're all playing a race of monsters. I'm a Yuan-Ti half blood. That's excellent. We have a Minotaur. Played a ton of them because I've done a lot of Dragonlance, and they're in my Nameless Realms world. And a Churl and a Drider. We're given the spark of life. That's very interesting. It's always fun to play a monster, especially if the monster has some wherewithal to not be evil per se, because we've talked about that last week, that evil's tough to play in a party.
Yeah.
I can't imagine playing that many monsters unless you're an evil party, but bravo to you, Lane, if you are playing that and they're not, you've got a good story behind it. But
And it could be an
nevertheless,
evil. It could be an evil campaign. You
could
know.
be, yeah. Those
Uh,
don't typically last long, in my opinion, but they are fun to play every once in a while. Right.
I'm
Because
looking. I'm seeing most of these creatures are traditionally chaotic evil, right? The Minotaur is chaotic evil. The
right.
troll, I think, is chaotic evil, right?
Right. I think the Drider is too.
Rider is
I'm not
too,
sure.
and the Yuntai, I'm not sure, but I think they're chaotic evil. I
Right.
don't think we have any lawful evil stuff in there.
Right. So
Yeah, so
it
maybe that is just a group of they're maintaining different alignments, or
right.
two
So
of
it
us
says
are.
two of us are neutral evil and two of us are pure neutral. So that's fine. Yeah. So
Yeah,
they're obviously a little bit of an outlier, but
yep, yep.
again, that makes it fun sometimes. But all right, we'll go to my next one. You
What's your
ready
next
for
one?
it? This
Not
this one
really.
is
Go
seven.
ahead.
This one's 17 hit dice. No, I'm just
17.
kidding. But this is one of my
Let's
favorite
put
creatures
it
right
up
here.
there. Let's see what we got.
All right, let's see what we got. Okay. Yeah.
You win.
The
I'm right there. That thing. Well, you know what? I'm not saying you win right off the bat. That's the coolest monster ever. It's one of my favorites.
yeah.
Hit dice are
I
off the charts, but I love it.
Right. But to me, I don't ever see them as high hit dice monsters. I see them as psionics. So typically they use other things to fight with. So I don't know why their HD would be so high, but their psionics are awesome. And they translate. They're always kind of vague with just their mind blast in standard D&D. They have the picture where the guy's doing this, in the old Monster Manual is hilarious. But I think they translate so well to fast because my sonic system is so easy to use, and you can really make them tough just by using sonics and let them be just let's say a 2-wound monster, but that gives them medium psionics because remember in fast they go the light, medium, heavy translates to the same amount in whatever they can use spell wise or psionic wise. So these guys are medium psionics. So they can throw 2D spells at you or -4 saving throw spells for charms, stuff like that. And then devour your brain. Who doesn't want brain devouring stuff? The slavers, really, they hate the drow. I mean, so many things are fun about these guys. I can't say enough about them to use them as a monster. Last time I got to use one was in a Barrier Peaks, which I did, I don't know, a year and a half ago. And that's a great one because he's running around in there. There's just like a rogue one. And by the end of it, he ended up getting killed, I think, but he went with the party and helped the party for some time. And I think one of the intellect devourers killed him or took him over. And then the party was so depressed that
That's what
the
he was
mind player
afraid of.
got
That's
killed
what the
because he
mind
was
player was
awesome. They
afraid of.
loved
He
it.
was afraid of the intellect devourer.
Yeah. He knew, he warned them. Like, and anyway, they loved him, and then he ended up dying, and they were all super sad about it. So anyway, yeah, and Lane says they usually have intellect devourers with them. Well, this guy was scared. And talk about a tough ass monster. Intellect devourers are just, they're broken. They're so tough if you ever really look at them. But anyway, I love the mind flayers, the Ithilids. So that's my pick. What do you have to say about them, Hal?
You gotta love anything that takes over somebody's mind and then eats their brain.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking that these are Dungeons and Dragons IP. Like this is one of their
Although,
monsters.
yeah,
So
I think that they might have been released with the new after that whole debacle with 5e and stuff like that. I think they might have released them and the beholders as well. They might have
Really?
been released to the general public. Yeah.
I have to I don't know. I'd have to confirm that because this is like they're great.
Yeah.
They're insidious. They're that lurking kind of evil in the background. Any kind of character that has a mind that is plotting, is thinking, and then can take over the mind of something else, is a dangerous thing. They had a lot of mystery surrounding them in 1E when they rolled out the monster manual, and they were so cool that I think they just threw a bunch of stuff at the wall and saw what sticks.
Yeah.
They came out with a series, I think between 1E and 2E, where they had a whole book devoted to the Elithids with a 3-module series. I forget the name of they did one for the Sahuagin, one for the Beholder, one for these guys. And they talked a little bit about their biology in there, which I thought was a little bit, I didn't like it. I'm not going to say that it was a little bit weak. I didn't like it at all. One of the main things I didn't like, and this is a 13th Warlock thing. When you look at a slimy creature with tentacles, all right, the Warlock's mind is going to places. And when they are talking about these things, that they're like these asexual creatures, and they reproduce by getting tadpoles and putting them in a pond and taking the tadpoles out and sticking them in people's heads. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is the weakest thing ever. Like, they should be reproducing the old fashioned way while they're eating somebody's brain. Like that's how these things should roll out. And that's what they should be doing. Now, I think they retconned that in later editions, and I think they did something different with how they are actually operating and whatnot. But definitely a super cool monster. I definitely think it's a made for fast type of monster as well with the psionics. You can blend all that stuff in. Some of these guys even use magic, so
Yeah.
they can replicate the effects, whether it's casting, whether it's psionics. You can break apart the stuff that they do. Great monster, great pick. Over the hit dice
Right.
allotment, but well worth it just to see these guys up on the screen. I love them.
Right. And that's a picture by my really, really good friend Todd Lockwood. So congrats to Todd, because that's an incredible shot that he did there for that
Wow,
one.
he
All
did
right.
that.
Yeah, Todd did.
That is
Yeah, it's a
awesome.
beautiful. Yeah, it's actually a double pane. It's Ithilids on one side with the girl, and then Drow on the other side within the same cavern. It's really cool shot. But anyway, go ahead.
All right, my next one is you know what? I'm going to throw out this next one. It is a E.
An E? I've never heard of an E.
Not an E. And an Aaron,
Is that from
yes.
Sesame Street?
Aaron, yes. One of the devils. You know what I'm talking about?
Arianes? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that we all are going to say it differently, but yes, I know what you're talking about. The demon. She's like a. It's basically like a succubus, but for devils instead of demons, or one of the two, something like
yeah. So the succubuses are demons.
Demons,
and
yeah.
these other ones, these Aaron-yeses, are
the devils.
Are the devil side of it,
right?
And the devils are so much more nasty than the demons. Like everybody else who played first edition D&D and had that first edition monster manual, I fell in love with the succubus picture.
Yeah,
Best picture in the book.
Yeah. Which I think is a Playboy model. I think is where Sutherland took that from. Yeah.
I definitely can see that.
He just sketched her out there. Yeah, I think you can find that original picture somewhere. Yeah.
No way, really? I would like to see that. But anyway, I like this monster a lot. This monster is playing a role in my current D&D campaign. one of these things has kind of formed a bond with one of the mayors in the town and is kind of influencing his decisions. But these things are awesome. They can teleport around and they teleport instantaneous. So they're in
Right.
combat, things are going bad. They're not in combat anymore. They can just leave combat. They can come appear in back of people. The magic user is in the back like he always is, casting spells. Next thing you know, here's this Aranyes behind him, shredding him apart. They're immune to a lot of weapons. They're immune to
Yep.
a lot of effects and whatnot. So they've got some durability where they can stay in the battles. And one of the things that is the coolest is they all come with ropes of entanglement, and that is a hidden magic item, man. That's super duper nasty and
It is.
super cool. Like it just immobilizes people in a good radius. They're sitting there fighting this thing, and next thing you know, these ropes come out. You can almost throw, because these are hellish creatures. You can almost throw like a Hellraiser kind of vibe to it, where you can have, it doesn't necessarily have to be a rope. It could be chains that come up from the floor. And that's kind of what I did when my players found one, and they started engaging her in combat. Next thing you know, these chains just shot out from the walls, the ceilings, the floors, and just chained them up. And it was a really cool encounter. I think a lot of times demonic villains, devil villains, they're kind of looked over, or they're looked at just for the sake of their hit dice and how much damage they can do. But these things have intelligences. They've got plans, they've got workings. They're making deals, they have agendas, and they're really rich monsters to throw into campaigns as main villains.
Absolutely, and they've got the intelligence for it, like you said, and their plan, the deviousness of their plans is always excellent. Yeah, and that's something else that we had talked initially about, making a rule for the displacer beast. But and remember, when you're talking about fast and taking one of these things over, her immunities versus you need magical weapons to hit her or something like that. That's you see that a lot in the fast things that I do, where you have your wound threshold basically gets doubled versus non-match. So if she has a natural wound threshold of 7 against, if you're using a weapon that's non-magical against her, it gets doubled to 14. That kind of stuff, or up to tripled 30 or 21.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on how you're doing it, those type of things, her wound threshold goes way the hell up. So if she's immune to electricity or something like that, again, you could go to 21 or so. It works always off the wound threshold, making it harder and harder to damage her with those items. Not that can't hit her, they just don't do anything. So keep that in mind if you're ever using a fast version of that. You'll see that happens a lot with elementals and vampires, werewolves. If it's not silver, everything goes up. So those type of things get taken into it as well. Hey, we lost Lane. Oh, that's good.
A creature like this is also good because as a devil, it has access to other devils and it can cut deals. So a lot of times the players, they'll want something or they'll need something. And if one of these things is in the mix, it can very well offer the players what they're looking for, or that player what they're looking for at a cost.
Right.
And it just, they're great for making multi-level, multi-layer games where, it's like peeling back an onion, and each layer that you peel back, there's some more underneath of it, and it's all bad, and it's all going to make you cry.
Right.
All right. What's
all
your
right? We want to go the third one.
Yeah.
Okay, this will be my highest hit die here. This is an actual hit die one, but these go all through. I mean, they go from not super high to very, very high, but because there's a whole area of them. But it's giants, be it a Flameborg, anything like that, all the way up to storm giants. I guess they're just such a great monster for one D&D or a D&D that I couldn't not have them in here, because they're basically something to thwart high level parties and tanks because they've just got so many hit points. That's why I've always loved them, and having them ascribed to hill, fire, flame, a cold, whatever type of giants you have, reef. I mean, there's just so many you can put in there. Blizzard giants I've created. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Mountain giants, and absolutely love him. This guy, as a hill giant, all of his various stuff that he's collected here reminds me of playing Temple of Elemental Evil with you, and you guys got to fight Toe Picker. Remember Toe Picker?
I remember Toe Picker.
He was out there just wandering around, and Toe Picker didn't like you being around his goats. But anyway, I love giants. I don't think that there's anything wrong with them. When I did them in fast, I gave them the sweeping ability, which allows them to basically get an arc in front of them and try to clear the area because they're just using weapons for such a big area. Yeah, and again, Elaine makes a great point there too. If you're playing AD&D, they're XP. Yeah, give me some XP, baby.
There's nothing as satisfying as that killing blow on the giant, and the giant just collapses down. There's nothing as good as that as a D&D player.
Right. So anyway, I love giants. I can't say enough about them. Just as a great creature to always have available, especially in AD&D. And they're kind of fun and fast because then you really have to make choices of, are they fated? Are they not fated? And how you have to set them up in that standpoint. A lot can be modified depending on what you're doing. But a basic hill giant, something like this, you would probably give him 3 wounds and just go with it and give him a little higher, obviously, wound threshold or something like that, like a big troll or something, before you go into the crazy ones. But nevertheless, that's my choice. What do you say on giants there, Warlock?
I can't poo-poo giants. I mean, they're a staple of fantasy, and they're awesome in Dungeons and Dragons. Against the Giants, probably my favorite D&D module that ever came out. Just one dungeon after the next, just filled with giants. They're pretty cool. You have, as soon as your characters hit that 3rd level, 4th level mark, you can roll out that hill giant to them, and as like the big baddie at the end, and let them tussle with the giant. They do nasty damage. I think there is what is the name of that? Something hidden forest or something, and it's an early D&D module from, I think, 2 through 4th level, maybe. The players go to this town, and this gypsy came into the town. They disrespected the gypsy, and now the gypsy put a curse on their land, blighted their land, and they send the characters off to see a druid so that the druid could lift the curse from their land. In the process of doing this, they go across a mountain. They go under this dwarven tunnel, this old abandoned dwarven tunnel. They got to play games with these goblins. They find the great druid. They get the potion to cure the land. They make their way back. On their way back, they discover that the gypsies have thrown this curse out because this giant stole a Pegasus from them. And now they're trying and is ransoming the Pegasus. And they're trying to get gold so that they can pay the giant, get their Pegasus back. In the meantime, they want the players to go and kill the giant, get the Pegasus, and then they'll lift the curse.
How do I not know this adventure? I've never heard anything like that.
Really? Yeah, it's called like it's like it's the one in number series, I think, right after Assault against the Cult of the Reptile Gods, and I think it's called the Forest Trail or something like that. What the heck? It's an end series adventure. Now I got now it's really on my mind, man, to find out what this module is. It's called looking through my collection here, the Forest Oracle. It's N2, the Forest Oracle.
Wow.
I'm
not aware of that. I don't own it, and I'm not aware. And I own a ton of modules. That's weird.
It's not the greatest and best module that TSR ever produced when it was TSR, but it's worthwhile. We played it. There's the hill giant at the end, and the players, because they're low level, they don't have a lot of hit points. The giant ended up actually ripping the head off of one of the players. The bigger the monster, when something like that happens, the more you can embellish and make the character's death like more epic. Like this thing
Sure.
grabbed him by the chest, around the waist. It picked him up as he's sitting there swinging his sword around. It grabbed his head and just pulled it right off and threw his body. And the players were sitting around with their head open, like, "What? You just pulled his head off?" Yeah, he pulled his head off. There's no coming back from that. There's no the DM's going to fudge it a little bit later, and you're going to wake
Right.
up. You were unconscious. No, man, he pulled his head off. And they have such a scope of giants that
Yeah.
you can cover, all different, from the frost giants running around. You're going up in the snow. You're in the mountains. There's mountain giants. Is if you're in the water, there's a storm giant going to pop up out of the water. You're never safe from giants, no matter where you're at in the
Right.
D&D world. There's always going to be one of these things plodding along.
Which
Uh,
makes them such fantastic creatures for the setting. Just
yeah.
perfect. It's like a dragon. There's always you can put a dragon anywhere. Same thing. The giants have some kind of genus that's always somewhere that you're looking at. So
The only thing I don't like about them, there's nothing sexy about a giant. Nothing like there's nothing sexy about a giant, and I for that reason I can't support these things, and that's why they didn't make my top list. They are cool, but they're not sexy. Not on my list.
true enough. All right, what do you got? What's yours? Let's go to number 3.
Best monster of all time, the Medusa.
Okay.
Everybody who plays D&D has had the experience where they see that shapely girl dressed in next to nothing, but she's got a hood up over her head. If you haven't had that experience in an adventure, you haven't played D&D yet.
Right.
It started out with there was one of these things back in Keep on the Borderlands, if you remember.
Yep.
She was chained up. The evil priestess was going to shave the snakes off her head, and sacrifice her to the evil god that they worshipped. She was in. She made another appearance in Ghost Tower of Inverness. You remember?
Maybe.
Yeah, she was on the level, that Earth level, when you're going through the vines and stuff. Next thing you know, she pops out. I just think they're awesome creatures. Once again, they have a lot of layers, almost like the lizard men. When you put these things out, yeah, they can just be that monster in the garden of stone statues, but they can also be something a little bit more. Like, what do they want? Are they just hateful creatures that are out in the middle of nowhere, turning everybody to stone, that they can turn stone? Or have they been captured, like the one was captured in the beyond in Keep on the
Keep on
Borderland?
board. Right.
Yeah, maybe they have an agenda. Maybe they're trying to get free. Maybe you're throwing some hook out, like they were a victim of some kind of curse that turned them into this creature, and they're trying, or they want to, reverse it. Or maybe you're just trying to do some Clash of the Titan stuff, and you're trying to take their head so that you can turn some kind of giant,
Yeah.
yeah, to stone. But I love them. I think they're awesome monsters. I think they're sexy until they pull their hood off. The only thing that's rough about them is that whenever you throw one of these things on the table, you've really got to be aware of the fact that your party might not walk away from the encounter.
Right.
Not only are they going to turn things to stone when they look at it, but their snakes are poisonous in their
Right.
head. So, even if the characters are like, all right, well, we're not going to look at the thing. Okay. here's your -4 to hit. And then she wades into combat, and these snakes start biting people. And now they're making saving throw versus poison. And if they fail one of those saves, then they die. If they fail one of the saves to versus petrification, now they're stoned. You
So,
don't have that cleric in there, that can turn people back. And even if you do, they only have so many spells. So you really
right. I mean,
them.
yeah, that's my drawback for this creature is it's a death sentence.
Mm-hmm,
Probably for somebody, because if you got 6 people sitting around a table, somebody's going to miss something,
mm-hmm.
right? Unless you're playing, via Zoom and everyone can cheat. You know what the rules are. If you're sitting at a table, you're probably going to be in trouble for your party. So you got to keep that in mind as a DM. I mean,
I,
obviously, it's a wonderful creature. You kind of fall in love with the concept of it, or at least we did in our age category with Clash.
mm-hmm,
Clash of Titans defined Medusas for me, and not that they
yeah.
hadn't been around forever, um, but yeah, and then taking them into D&D. Most, I would say it's if you played at D&D for a decade, let's say, or less, you fought a goblin and you probably fought a Medusa. It's just one of those things. You find them, they're there. It's such a great monster to put out, but they can be a TPK. They're incredibly dangerous, and even if they don't TPK you, they can kill 2 or 3 of people's favorite characters and kind of ruin a party anyway.
It's
So
definitely
that's
not a casual monster. It's
right,
definitely not a casual monster to, like a random encounter or something like that. This is not the monster for a random encounter. This is good monster where your players know what they're going into,
right.
or you've seeded the area with something that kind of helps them out. Like there should definitely be 1 or 2 potions of a stone to flesh floating
Flush.
around in the area, a
It's
scroll.
always dangerous when you're playing and you find stone to flesh potions. You're like, oh crap, those aren't here just for a random reason. I mean,
Yeah,
there's some reason they're here. I'm fighting a cockatrice, or I'm fighting a Medusa skull.
basilisk is
Yeah,
coming out, the Medusa's
yeah,
coming
that's
out.
yeah.
I always like to throw them out, like if I have some foresight, like I'll throw them out an adventure beforehand. Um, like I'm running my characters through the your dungeon series, and it just fell out of the Virgin Mines. I'm running
Virgin
them
Mine,
through the
yeah.
Virgin Mines, and I swapped out some items. And one of the items I swapped out for a petrification protection from petrification scroll. So there's nothing in the mines that turns anybody to stone. I don't think.
I don't
Um,
think so.
no, but I'm thinking down the road, there definitely is going to be a cockatrice coming into the picture. So I want them to have something like this. Now, if they go above ground and they're like, "Hey, you know what? I need some gold to level up. I'm selling this scroll." Well, I gave them the opportunity to avoid some death. They went for the gold, and now some of them are stoned.
Right.
Um, and I think going in when you're playing first edition, even though characters they do love their characters, it's still first edition, and death is a real thing for for every first edition player. They go in there,
Right.
and I would anticipate if I put a Medusa out there, one of the players is not coming back, and as the DM, like I'm okay with that. Sounds horrible, but sometimes somebody's got to die in order for everybody else to appreciate living.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, I mean, for sure. That's one of those monsters that you're going to see something like that. Lane says Trask. Yeah, somebody's going to die with that one. Better have your wish ready too to keep it dead afterward. Yeah, so yeah, that's talk about OP. But yeah, I
Where
mean,
did
Medusa is
that fall
definitely.
out in second edition Monster Manual? Is that where the Trask first made
I
its
think no, I think it's an MM2.
yeah,
Yeah,
something
I'm
made
pretty
me
sure it's an MM2. And then
yeah.
you saw it in the Monstrous manual. It's in that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I could check, but I swear it's an MM2. But Maybe I'm wrong
I've
because
actually
it's
never.
doing this like it's like it doesn't look like its size because
Yeah,
there's no comparison in it. Kind of looks like a creature, but yeah.
I've never encountered one in my years of playing, and I've never used one in my years of running games.
Well, it's super OP, and the only reason I think it really comes into play is if you really wanted to say, "We went up against a Trask." It's like I have fought a Trask, one of those things, but otherwise I don't know why you'd use it in a combat. I mean, yes, I've played against a Trask before, but it was more of the standpoint of saying, "We've done that," kind of thing. Like as a player, yes, I fought one, but otherwise, I'm not sure why it's really around.
I
It's
guess
just it's
Tiamat
base
was
creature.
my Tarask. That was
Right.
that was the that
Yeah,
was
you're
the
right.
one
Tiamat. There you go.
Tiamat. That's what I cut my teeth on, I guess.
Right.
All right, so now let's look at Medusa in terms of
Yeah.
fast.
Sure.
Got to be at least a medium.
Absolutely. Yeah. If
Okay.
not a heavy. Yeah. I mean, you probably, yeah. I mean, you could do her medium or heavy depending on what you're thinking about doing with it.
Now,
But
here's
really, if she's a medium, you're bumping your wound
let me play
threshold
devil's
probably.
advocate here. You got Clash of the Titans. You got Perseus. He cut the thing's head off with one blow.
Right.
Should it be light so it just takes one hit to kill it and it's that deadly?
I mean, you definitely could do it as one.
Or is that a
The only
critical hit on the part of Perseus?
I would assume it was a critical because it's Perseus, but because when you drop a creature of that category to one and do it to one hit, um, likely one of your characters is going to hit that thing and just kill it. So you probably don't want that to happen if you want to have a weighty encounter. So you're probably going to make it more so that than just one hit would take her down. And remember also when you're looking at fast, typically when you're building monsters too, they have a negative to your save toward whatever level they are. So her poison or her saving throws versus petrification, if she's heavy, they'd be -3. If she's medium, they'd be -2. So those you're gonna make those on your physical saves. So keep that in mind too when you're building her, because if she's heavy, then -3 is pretty rough on a physical save. You might be at 7, but now all of a sudden you're at 4 to save versus poison or petrification on it. That's rough. So
Sometimes
keep
when
that
we
in mind.
talk, I feel like I've never read the fast rule book. I did not know that heavy creatures and medium creatures and light creatures gave -1, 2, and threes to saves of their effect.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
that's typically the way it goes, and sometimes they've even doubled that. So, but sometimes I've doubled it where it's -4 and -6 if it's really nasty, depending on what I think the creature is. And then sometimes on a light creature that might have something, I don't give any negatives. So even versus 1, but typically the rule is 1, 2, 3. Just like they can use light spells, medium spells, or heavy spells, or psionics. It's always linked to those three stats. Yeah,
So we're
what they
talking
are.
about the Medusa. If she's heavy, would be a physical save, right? Wouldn't be a mental save
Yeah,
because
physical
you're doing
save.
one of these and -3. So yeah, we're talking about at the most it's a 6, right? Because you max out at
Yeah,
a 9 for your save.
that's
So it would
absolutely
be,
right. The
it would be a
best you
6.
could save against her would be a 6. Yeah, which is still 60%, but not everyone's going to have a 9. Maybe your fighters are or something like that, but
Yeah,
yeah. So, and remember that's a double save because she might bite you too, and that's you're also a neg. So,
right.
and if
Now
she's
that
heavy, her poison is 3 wounds.
yeah,
So because the poison, it goes by the level, not by number of dice rolled. So a light poison is 1 wound, medium poison is 2 wounds, and a heavy poison is 3. So each one of those bites is 3 wounds. And remember, a character only has 3 unless they're upper level, or have a faded trait. So that'll wipe you out quick. Yeah.
yeah, so she'd be just as nasty, if not more so in fast than she would be in D&D.
100%. Yeah, she's rough. And again, if so, the more more wounds you give her, the tougher it is to take her down. And then she's going to be killing some people. Not to mention the fact that she could, like you've seen in Titans or stuff, like she'd be a great bowman. Shooting at people. Like you could even put her venom on the arrows. I mean, you could be evil with
Yeah, I almost feel like we're talking about a faded villain.
Oh, sure. And if she's faded, then just kiss it, because she might have 5 hits and a couple good faded traits or something like that. And again, light, medium, and heavy, if you wanted to do that as well, they qualify for a talent or a faded trait per level. So yeah, she could have a bunch of faded traits. Anyway, there's a way to build her, but she might be worth several thousand experience points. Especially if you look at the compendium volume 1, where you get to add even more into those experience points when you're doing the monsters. So yeah, she's a nasty enemy, both in 1E and in pass. Don't want to fight one. Yeah.
I'd like to know if people can leave a comment in the section when it comes time to it, if they prefer to hear things like talking about magic items, monsters, things like this, where we're comparing and contrasting and talk about pros and cons and our favorites, or whether they prefer things like RPG philosophy stuff, like how to go about using a good villain or things like that, to sort of maybe guide us on what we're going to be talking about in future weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And Lane, that's a best idea.
What do you say?
If you've got a poisonous creature, yeah, put it on your arrows for sure. Lane, does your 1T, you see it's her arrows. I assume she's got a 6-pack or something. Lane loves the 6-pack, so yeah.
Lane loves the 6-pack. The only thing he loves more than a 6-pack is an 8-pack. That's the only thing. That is the only thing.
Yeah.
If I see some AI pictures being generated and there's no muscle definition in the abdominal region, I know they are not stemming from anything that Lane has put together.
we know Lane's choices here for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, that's our 6. We did it really well. We're like almost at an hour. So that's perfect. Yeah, I love your choices. I thought they were all strong. Not my choices, but great choices nonetheless. Really liked them.
Okay. Yeah, yours were okay. The displacement
just okay.
You know what? They just were not. The Mind Flayer was sexy. The other two were not sexy. Zero sexy value.
Zero sex appeal. Sorry.
Zero sexy value in the Mind Flayer. I mean, in the Giants, the Mind Flayers definitely were 9 or 10. But they were, even my lizard men were sexy. Lizard men are sexy.
They're like ripped if you're that guy, and Jeff D did.
Lizard men are definitely sexy. There's nothing sexier than a naked girl wrapped around a lizard man. That's the best. That is the best. That's like my abs for Lane is, lizard men is for me. Abs Lane, lizard men the Warlock. Yeah. On that note, let's call it a night.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. As always, here from Art of the Genre, great gaming. And thanks, Hal, for coming on. And we'll keep doing this every Tuesday if people keep showing up. All right.
Amen.
All right. Later.